Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I'm the CEO of Aegis in Tallahassee, Florida. November is here. Look out for cybercrime, emails, texts, phone calls. Hackers have weaponized our communication tools and use them every day to try to take our monies and our data. So be careful out there, especially as the elections loom. Hackers are looking to take and seize the opportunity for us to click on candidates' websites, candidates' links. Anyway, vet all things before donating money and beware cybercrime. Today on the Biz and Tech Podcast, we welcome Allison Chase, President and CEO of the Able Trust. And thank you to Donna Wright for introducing the Able Trust to the Aegis Biz and Tech Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Blake. I'm really excited to be here. But you scared me a little bit with your introduction. So with the cybercrime and the tech, I mean, it truly is really frightening.
I was talking to a group, Florida Trend yesterday, and the Secretary of State was in the room and the mayor, and like, tell us what's going on in technology. I'm like, hacking. Yeah. I mean, it used to be something that took up 10% of our time, and now it takes up, as a business, 50% of our time.
Wow.
To ballpark it. And it's not rocket science. And you call them hacking, assuming they're doing programming or something malicious. Right. But, they're just sending out emails with malware. Yeah. Hoping 1 in 1,000 will click.
Donna and I got one yesterday. We both were like, did anybody else get this? We got it. You just have to. And if you're not thinking about it, you're not diligent, it's easy to click on those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good plug to invest in email attack simulation software, do cyber trainings, two-factor authentication. That's your PSA for today. So, Allison, what does the Able Trust do?
So the Able Trust advances education and employment of individuals with disabilities here in Florida. So we were created 34 years ago by the Florida legislature to do just that. Every state in the country has a public vocational rehabilitation program that exists to help people with disabilities get into employment. We are the only state in the country that has an organization like the Able Trust that exists to support that public program. So we are essentially the foundation to the state vocational rehabilitation program. And we have lots of different roles, but one of the most important that I'm looking forward to sharing with you today is running a high school program throughout the state for high school students with disabilities to make sure that they are graduating from high school and that they are enrolling in post-secondary education.
And because that's high school high tech,
High school
correct?
High tech, that's correct.
Yeah, that jumped off the page on your website.
Yeah. So 30 years, this is our 30-year anniversary of the high school high tech program. We are in 46 locations throughout the state. We partner with school districts and local community nonprofits, charter schools and private schools to run the program. It's a little bit different in every community because every community in Florida is a little bit different, right? So we want students to know about what's available in their backyard, but also available here in Florida. And we have some really great post-secondary education programs that lead to really good careers. Over the last 10 years, Florida has invested billions of dollars in increasing post-secondary education opportunities. So when I say post-secondary education, we're talking about four-year university, but also just certificate and license programs that can lead to really great jobs and that are very needed. And we want students with disabilities to know about those opportunities. And oftentimes, particularly the students that we target, we talk about them oftentimes being the ones that fall between the cracks. Right. They're not the ones that are the superstars, but they're also not the ones that, people say, obviously we need to be providing interventions and help and support. Oftentimes they just go unnoticed, and then that leads to either not graduating from high school, barely graduating from high school, and not having options after high school because they didn't know what they needed to do to prepare for those options. So that's what high school high tech does.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for the noble work that you all do.
Oh, thank you.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, background. Where are you from originally?
I am from Tallahassee originally.
Tallahasseian.
I am. Fourth
Excellent.
Generation on one side, fifth on the other. Yep.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Lincoln, which killed my parents because they were both Leon alumni. I'm like, well, it's your fault. You moved into the Lincoln zone. But loved Lincoln. And my husband is also from Tallahassee. His parents also went to Leon. He went to Godby. But
Excellent.
we both went away to school for a few years and came back and have been here forever, and I wouldn't live anywhere else.
So tell us about that journey. We were talking about the University of Oklahoma yesterday.
Yep.
You also went to Florida State.
Yep.
Walk us through after graduation.
Yep.
What was that track like?
So I went to Florida Southern College in Lakeland for a couple of years, which was a great, I love Florida Southern, and it was a great experience, especially coming from a smaller town. Tallahassee back in 1988 wasn't huge, and it was a nice.
I remember. I graduated in '92.
Okay, all right. So it was a great way to kind of step out, exercise some freedoms, but not be at a huge university. But I knew I wanted to go into some kind of social service field. And Florida Southern, I don't know if they have that now, but at the time, it was a liberal arts college.
And you had that path and that idea
Right.
out of high school?
No.
No,
I
okay.
mean, I knew that I, wanted to do something that was in some kind of helping profession.
Okay.
So I also had a lot of friends here at Florida State that I, wanted to spend some time with too. So that was another motivation. So I came back and went to school for a semester or so before Florida State said, you got to declare a major. So it's not a really exciting story. It's not the way that we want our students to find their professions. But I was like, you know what? I know I want to go into some kind of social service, but I want to not take a bunch of statistics classes. I had taken a statistics class, and it was really hard for me. So I was like, social work's not it, because they have a lot of statistics you have to take. And so I literally pulled out the FSU catalog and started going through it. And there was this little small major called rehab services. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting. Let me declare this as my major. I'll take a few classes, and if I don't like it, I'll do something else. And I ended up not only getting my bachelor's degree, but getting my master's degree in it. And it is a program that is specifically back then, the federal government was putting money into it to recruit more professionals coming into the public vocational rehabilitation system. So that's what I started doing after I got my master's degree. I worked for the state's Division of Blind Services, which has a public VR program. We have two VR programs here, one for people with all other disabilities other than blindness and visual impairment. And I started there working with a caseload of high school students and college students, which was really great at that time of life to kind of have that. It was another kind of soft transition. That's just, I saw how important it was,
Right.
especially for those high school students that I was working with that hadn't known about all the different possibilities that were before them. So that really is where kind of my passion ignited.
How about a
this field.
favorite course throughout your studies? Anything pop out? I can think of a
Yes.
couple that were
So-
mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with what I do now, but it was Old Testament at Florida Southern. And, I grew up in the Methodist Church, and you spend a whole lot more time in the New Testament than the Old Testament. I always thought of Old Testament as kind of like a long list of really complicated names and fire and brimstone and all of those kinds of things. And the professor that I had, Dr. Johnson at Florida Southern, just really brought it to life. And he was super interesting but super funny and made me want to do a good job in that class. So every time we had a test, he would tell us, here are 3 essay questions, 2 of which will be on the test, and you get to pick one. So you had to know at least 2 of them to be able to know that one of your questions. And I would spend a lot of time making sure that my answer was going to be really good, because he just inspired me to want to do better. And it was really about his leadership as a professor, not necessarily the content of what he was teaching.
Yeah, those experiences stick with you, don't they?
Yeah.
I remember I took a class at the University of Florida. This was in 1992. I believe that's the year that the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. Our mutual friend J.R. Harding, always makes sure to write a great piece
Right,
on
he
that
does.
legislation
Yep.
each year as the anniversary hits. But before words like inclusion and that act and things like that were commonplace, in the early 90s, late 80s, you didn't hear a lot of that. But Florida had a class called Exceptional People.
Oh,
And there was this gentleman that taught the class, and you saw him up at the front of the classroom each day in class, and he walked the room and, nothing really jumped off the page about this professor. And throughout the course, you went through exercises like walking around campus with a blindfold on, and experiencing a day without sight, doing the same thing auditory.
Right.
And then on the last day of class, he's like, "Would it surprise you to learn that I'm blind?"
Oh, wow.
And
You didn't know the whole semester?
he started pointing things out around the room, like little X's with little raised ridges on the floor, so he'd know the boundaries of the room. And he spent the last 10 minutes of the course, just talking about that and never judge people. And it was so powerful. I've never forgotten
amazing.
it. Because everybody in the class is like, "What?" And it's a secret, And he says, "Don't ever tell anyone about this, because that's part of this course." And for whatever reason, kids aren't the best at keeping secrets. But nobody ever talks about it.
Well,
and he's like, "You should take this course."
Yeah.
And freshmen aren't really people to say, "Hey, you should take this course." But it was one of those classes that changed lives.
Right. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I love that story.
I've never forgotten it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about professional proudest moments. I'm sure in your line of work, there's been a few. Could you point to one proudest moment in your career?
It's not a moment, it's a thing, and it's the team that we have at the Able Trust. I am exceptionally proud of the group of professionals that we have, Donna being one of them. I have never worked, and this is really, I think, a testament to say, because when you work in the field like social services where their pay is not high, a lot of people come into it because they have the heart for it and dedication. I've never worked with a group of people that are as smart and as dedicated and passionate about the work than the group that we have at the Able Trust. And I don't say that because I'm just working with them right now. It's truly, it is the truth. So that is the proudest thing.
That's
when
awesome.
we have public events, outward-facing events, I'm just like, my heart is full. Because other people see that. And I just took a meeting this morning with Michelle Bono, who I'm sure a lot of your audience know. And she was at one of our events back in September, and she said, "I want to tell you how impressed I was with your team." She said, you oftentimes go to events like this, and people are friendly, because that's the way you're supposed to be, but then you see them over huddled in a corner, whispering and rolling their eyes. And she said, "I didn't see that, and I felt the excitement and the dedication."
That's huge.
Yeah.
Leading a team is one of the most challenging things. And in your line of work, I can't imagine the challenges you face, but that's amazing. Employee of ours walked in my office this morning right before I came here. He's like, "I just wanted you to know that the team right now is awesome." And you spend all the time training and teaching and advocating and coaching, and when you hear it from the other side, that means everything.
Yeah, well, like you said, there are challenges, and some of the biggest challenges is they're super smart. They're smarter than I am, which is what I want. But sometimes they come in and they bring something to me, and I'm like, what do you think? You tell me your thoughts on that, which is what I want. That's, but that can be challenging as they're super smart.
All right, so you talked about it earlier. What else do we need to know about high school, high tech, and the 30th anniversary? Are there events coming up? What's on the horizon?
So, as you said, 30 years. We've been operating this program throughout the state of Florida. It started as one small program in Brevard County with 6 students, and now we have 46 programs throughout the state, serving this past year right at 1,300 students, which is really, I love that. I love that we've grown to that, but there are so many students that are not a part of the program. There's over 125,000 high school students with disabilities just in Florida's public high schools. So that doesn't include private schools or homeschooled students. So that would be the moonshot goal, but it probably will not happen in my lifetime. But we have set a goal to increase the number of students that we serve by 5,000 each year. So quadrupling the number of students that we serve. It's an ambitious goal. It takes a lot of money. So that's a lot of what we're doing is, helping people who we believe that this is important to their own passions, their own missions. Bringing people with disabilities into post-secondary education and employment is only going to help our state. So talking about that message to the right people and the 30th anniversary is a great time to do that. We feel like we are perfectly positioned to have these conversations and to invite this growth. So that's the big thing around high school high tech right now.
Excellent. Do you have a mentor?
I do not have one mentor. I have what I like to think of as like mentoring moments. So I do have some people that are like, I could say like long-term mentoring kinds of relationships that I could go to for general questions. Tony Carvajal being one of them. I'm sure many of your people in your audience know Tony. He was
in that group at the Florida Trend Luncheon yesterday.
Oh,
so we got to hear
yes.
from Tony and everything he's doing with our universities.
Yeah, he's amazing. And Tony was in this position that I'm in right before I was.
Oh, okay.
So I had known Tony through Florida Chamber kinds of things, but really had the privilege of working closely with him. And he is somebody that I will text and call when I have, I'm having a moment of maybe uncertainty or doubt in myself, and he's always really great. But I look for people who may have a specific expertise or experience for whatever problem I'm facing at that moment. And so kind of those mentoring moments, and it can be lots of different people. My husband, he and I try not to talk about work as much as possible, just to
That's tall
have
order.
Your own sacred space. But every once in a while I'm like, you know what, I'm having this issue. I need to talk, I need your counsel. And, I always say that he is my wisest counsel because he knows me, and he won't let me BS, he'll say, no, that's you've got the wrong perspective, or you're shying away from this, or, he'll call me on it. So, yeah, lots of different mentors.
Yeah, my wife is a employee at Aegis also,
Yeah.
so I get that feedback whether I want it or not,
Yeah.
and it's invaluable to have
Yeah.
someone you trust to
Right.
be able to offer that counsel. But
Right.
there is it is hard to turn off sometimes.
Yes.
And
for
what line
sure.
of work is your husband in?
He is a civil engineer. He specializes in wastewater, which is, thrilling to the rest of the world, but very important. And he also works for a nonprofit, the Florida Rural Water Association.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So away from work, are you an avid reader?
I am.
And what are we reading now?
So I usually have a couple of books going, usually one for pleasure and one for professional development. So my pleasure book right now is The Women by Kristen Hanna, which
Okay.
is about a young woman who goes off to Vietnam and has, sort of these unrealistic expectations of glory, and finds out that it's not all that. She's a nurse and her brother's killed.
Was this during the war, that
Yeah.
timeline?
Yeah,
Okay.
during Vietnam. And then, so I'm reading that. I'm in a book club. That's our next book. And then for professional development, I'm reading a book called Quiet, which the tagline for it is something like the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. And I am an introvert. And so I saw it and I thought, wow, this sounds kind of interesting. So I just started it. Don't have a whole lot
Nice.
other than the introductory part
Good
of
for
it.
you,
but-
having that division of recreation
Yeah.
and professional development. I just have a couple books going because I can't focus. Where the Crawdads Sing,
Yeah.
I think, is one.
Mhm.
I'm about halfway through, and it's great. I just haven't finished it, and I've started
Yeah.
2 others while reading it. So there's that.
I know. I do the same thing. And I've read that book. It's a good book.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Other recreational activities. Tallahassee has some great festivals and concerts. We were talking about Word of South yesterday,
Yeah.
celebrating its 10 years
Oh,
as a festival with Mark Muschin,
Yeah.
who's been on this show, leading the charge over there. Last year's performance, The Flaming Lips, I'd never really heard of that band prior to, or I've heard of them, but never seen them. Unbelievable performance.
wow.
Unbelievable. I'm not allowed to say who the next headliner is. Mark let me know, but it's going to be very entertaining for anyone of the 80s.
Oh, awesome.
Yes,
Okay.
so that's your
Yeah.
your teaser.
Oh, I can't wait.
But what about you? Favorite concert recently? Childhood? Anything goes.
So I've been to lots of really great concerts. So being a child of the 80s, my husband, big 80s hair band fans. So we've been to, you name a hair band, we've been to most of them. But that is not the one that is most memorable. The one that's most memorable to me, I was in ninth grade, and Rick Springfield and Corey Hart came to Tallahassee. And that was the first concert that I ever got to go to without my parents.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so I had my girlfriend, and I had friends that were old enough to drive, and somehow my parents let me do that. I don't know that many ninth grade girls should be doing that, but we had an amazing time. And I mean, Rick Springfield, I love his music, and but it wasn't about the actual concert itself. It was about the experience. It was like this again, another transition, of kind of that newfound freedom.
And Mr. Springfield is still getting it done out there.
He is. What did they call him on the working man's DJ or something like that on the 80s on 8?
That sounds about right. Yeah. He was on General Hospital too, wasn't he?
I think
back
so.
in the day?
I was a guiding light girl, so I didn't watch.
But I was looking to hire him for a private party for an association. I used to work in the music business, so if someone asks, I'll do that kind of work on the side. And I was shocked how much money he wanted. So obviously Rick is doing very well these days. And on the hair metal front, Jeannie and I went to see Joan Jett, Poison, Def Leppard, and Motley Crue in Las Vegas at the end of 2022. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Motley Crue might need to retire, but Def Leppard, unbelievable.
So I saw Motley Crue in their heyday, Dr. Feelgood, that tour in Orlando, and they were really, really good. I've seen them since then. I could agree that, And we went down to Tampa to the amphitheater, and it was like Foreigner. Oh, I can't remember. There was 3 or 4 of them, and they were all really good. And Mike and I, that's my husband, we were like, it's because they're sober.
They're all focusing on the music.
Right.
Yeah, along the lines of your ninth grade story. When I was in 7th grade, I grew up in Dothan, Alabama, before moving here for high school. My mom let me go to Albany, Georgia on a school night with my friend Quinn and his older sister, who was a responsible 16-year-old.
Right.
Thank you, Leisha, for driving us. We saw Guns N' Roses, who was an unknown band at the time, open for Motley Crue in Albany. I've never forgotten it as long as I live.
Oh, my gosh.
Fantastic. And I had to go to school the next day. But that's what we do. What do you think is the greatest thing about living in Tallahassee and Florida in general?
So Mike and I say all the time how lucky we are to live here just because of the natural beauty, specifically here in Tallahassee and the surrounding areas. We like to be outside, hiking, we play golf, and so just to be in such a beautiful place is really mind-blowing, how lucky we feel. Tallahassee itself, just, having been here, hometown, knowing people that, you can run into and it happened the other day. I was downtown at the Department of Education, and the woman who came down to take me upstairs was a girl that I was in high school with and I hadn't seen in 30-something years. And,
that's awesome.
So just to have those kinds of encounters, I think is really special. And I also just love how, in Tallahassee and in Florida, there's always some issue to be worked on, and the business community really rallies around those issues. It's not all about making money. It's about, we want our communities to be healthy, safe, thriving. We want everybody in our community to have those opportunities to thrive because it's good for all of us. And I've never lived in any other state or any other community other than a couple of years down in Lakeland, and I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in that community. But I don't know that that's real common, amongst business leadership. We've been really blessed, particularly with the message that we have through the Able Trust, to be able to say, it's important to include people with disabilities, not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's good for business. It's good for the state, and business leaders recognize that. Community leaders recognize that and respond to it. They don't just say, oh, yeah, you're right. but I've got a million other things to do. They're like, oh yeah, we're right. How can we make sure that that happens?
Right.
And that's, I think, what I love the most about Tallahassee and Florida is that leadership and dedication to having a thriving, healthy community wherever you are in the state of Florida.
Yeah, I think Tallahassee's unique, obviously, with the government, Florida State, Mayor Daley, the Tallahassee Chamber, the Florida Chamber, organizations like the Able Trust, all rallying together when there is an issue that needs rallying around. I think it's unique. The perspectives I heard yesterday in that Florida Trend Roundtable were really interesting.
Yeah.
To see what people were bringing to the table.
Right.
But kudos again to you and your team for everything that you all do and the noble work that you accomplish on a daily basis. Is there anything we didn't talk about the Able Trust that you'd like to share?
So I didn't mention our wonderful outcome rates that we have. So I told you that we wanted to make sure that high school students are, first of all, graduating, and second of all, then going on to post-secondary education. Mm-hmm. Our high school high-tech program boasts a 99% graduation rate compared to 87% of all other students with disabilities, which is a really great percentage, I think. 87 is nothing to scoff at, but 99% and we've been holding that for over 10 years. We also, thank you.
That's great.
Our students are going on to post-secondary enrollment this past year at a rate of 65%, which is way outpacing even the general student population, which is still in the mid-50s. The sad part is that all other students with disabilities are only going on to post-secondary education at a rate of 27%. And we just think that's unacceptable. We want students with disabilities to be set on a path to success. And 72% of jobs in the next 10 years are going to require some kind of post-secondary education. And we want to make sure that students with disabilities are matching that pace. So that's our dedication, that's our work, and we want to bring more students into the highly successful program that we have.
Hear, hear. Our last question today, if you could call yourself in Lakeland in, say, 1989 or 90, and give yourself a piece of advice, what would that look like?
Learn how to do fundraising first and get really good at it. Yeah, if you're going to go into this work, if you can do that, that's the most important thing that we do. And it's just like with sales,
Sure.
In order to be a
That's
business
immediately
person,
where my mind went.
You have to be really good at
Get into
sales.
sales.
Yeah, and I would have started there because if you've got that foundation, you can do anything in nonprofit work.
Well, that's a nice segue. How can we get involved with the Able Trust for everyone listening today? Your events, your fundraising mission, your advocacy, web address, Instagram, Twitter. What's the best way to reach you?
So our web address is abletrust.org. All of those other things are on there, including my personal email address, which is allison@abletrust.org. We want to get to know people who find or at least interested, may already have a passion for what we do. How can our work help you achieve your goals? That's the first thing that we want to know. And then, we have launched a campaign to get to that 5,000 students, and it takes money. We're going to be having an event in March that is a fundraising event. We had a fundraising event last month. It's still October, so it was September, yeah.
October is the month that won't end.
Yeah, it has been a longer month than usual. But we are having a fundraising event in March and, here in Tallahassee. And, if there's people that want to learn more about what we're doing, that's the time to come and find out in that kind of venue. But if you want to have a conversation and we want to know about what you're doing, how can we help you achieve your goals? Because we believe that we can.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison, for your time today.
Thank you for this opportunity. This was great.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Blake Dowling with Aegis, signing off of the Biz and Tech Podcast, celebrating over 50 episodes over 5 years with the wonderful production team of Josh, Gabby, and everyone at Level Up Digital Media. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Don't click on those emails. We'll see you next time. Adios.